Hey everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the Original Strength Podcast. I have got my good friend Doug Pfeifer back on the show with me today. Doug is an advanced certified trauma practitioner, and he is also a certified trainer in the neurosequential model of education. And he's also a rabid Ted Lasso fan. And Doug is also a creator of the Resilient Purpose Plus. It's an online platform to help people achieve mental resilience and wellness. And in today's show, Doug and I are going to be talking about mental health and resilience and Ted Lasso. Thanks for listening, everyone. Enjoy the show. Pull up a chair and buckle up. It's the Original Strength Podcast.
There is something else. Ted Lasso. Yeah. Did you like that song?
Oh, dude, yeah. I played it a couple times. I sent it to my wife, sent it to my kids, like because we all love Ted Lasso. So
I was amazed. So like I was thinking of like one of my points of healing is laughter. So like if from any mental health condition or I hate the word disorder, but any mental health struggle or injury, laughter is a very strong medicine. And so I was cracking up. I mean, he's actually a really good singer. I was like blown by that. But then just where's that sound coming from? Like, oh, you guys are singing. Like it amazes me his ability to do that.
So for anybody listening, we will put the Ted Lasso singing Guns N' Roses Patience in the notes of the show. All right. So you said one of your points of healing is laughter.
Yes.
Do you have other points of healing?
Well, I mean, probably they're in line with what you like to do and what you preach, but I kind of put it on my shirt that we created is to breathe and to move. And it's interesting because like as a licensed therapist, you would think that like the point of healing is just to talk about things, but that is probably the most challenging thing for people to do is I have all this pain inside and I'm going to come in and go talk to somebody that I don't know about all these painful things. And no, there's no way I want to do that. Well, the more and more I've learned and just learned of many different kind of places of how do you live a healthy life, most of our healing is done not in our thinking brain, it's done in our body, in our lower systems, the parts of the body that move, the parts of the body that are more, I think, reflexive. Like laughter, true laughter is really something just hits you and you just laugh, and something you don't know necessarily why it's funny or until you can kind of reflect on it, but it just kind of makes you kind of laugh and so you just but that's healing. And so you tend to seek out because it makes you feel good, just like skipping. I remember like when I did your course, you're like, we were talking about skipping, it's like, okay, try skipping and then see that you can't smile. Like, no, you pretty much automatically instinctually smile. You don't say, I'm going to tell myself to smile. You just naturally do that. So you have to kind of like, can we engage in activities that naturally make us feel this way? If we have more of those, then we can kind of like fight up against those painful incidents and think that, okay, my life's not just only about pain. And so I kind of think about that.
I do think laughter is a very powerful reset. And I'm not talking about like a ha laugh, like a genuine belly laugh. That
belly
like
laugh, right?
Shakes your whole body. Like, and it literally, somebody that's really laughing where they can't breathe or, where they're almost crying, right. Like that, the diaphragm just, it starts bouncing, shaking the whole body. And there's something amazing feeling about that.
What absolutely. And then the other thing I would say is like, yes, laughing alone is still therapeutic, but if you laugh with somebody, then that's super powerful, because I think that actually makes us connect stronger. So, and then when we connect stronger, then we feel loved and cared for and just a part of something. There's that sense of belonging. If we both find something funny and belly laughing, belly shaking kind of laughter, then that is a significant dose of healing, right? Like you're just, that felt really good. I don't want to lose that experience. I just want to hold on to that kind of thing. And that's why, that's why me and you like kind of like bond over Ted Lasso, because there's that there we could both find like really strong humor in that, and it connects us.
That and the writing is just, it's amazing. Like they know how to hook you, right?
They
Like,
do know how to hook you. But I think
so
it's kind of like they, it also, I think, helps with difficult things, right? Right. Like if you can put some levity into it and things like that, then it's easier to talk about those things.
speaking of mental health, season 2 of Ted Lasso was predominantly about
All
mental
about
health.
mental health, right? It's been a several months since I've watched it, but yes, it was and my favorite scene, and this is for anybody who's tried therapy, is that scene where Jason Sudeikis or Ted Lasso is like having to go see this therapist for the first time. And he's like, you don't know me. Like, you're just getting paid to, and that's what we deal with all the time as licensed clinicians, is like, you're having to come to us to tell us that, about your problems. Like, it is a little awkward sometimes at first for people, both even on my end as a therapist, like, okay, so what do you want to talk about? And it doesn't certainly feel natural. So I definitely like, I find like a lot of that healing, almost like the healing or the connection with that in that season was like not even in the therapy office. It was like those moments outside of that, right? Where that's where they're allowing themselves to be more vulnerable. It's not as awkward and it's more natural, because that always stood out to me. And so we try, like in our agency, we try to be as creative and flexible in the way we do our sessions. If we want to go for a walk, go for a walk. If we're gonna connect with you in the lobby and say something really, helpful, then we'll do that, whatever kind of works. So
Have you ever read the book The Body Keeps the Score?
mhm. Bessel van der Kolk, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it talks about how movement helps integrate emotions. Like,
Mhm.
so yeah, going for a walk for during therapy seems like that could be a very powerful gateway or entry point to help a person be more comfortable with connecting with their emotions.
Well, there's also kind of another benefit. Like, number one, if you're going for a walk with somebody, we talk about this in our work, as your parallel. So there's a difference between being face to face and talking
Uh,
about our problems than walking together. It's a little, there's less pressure, there's less of that dominating hierarchy, because there is a hierarchy. If, like, I'm your therapist, there is an element of hierarchy which is automatically going to activate your stress response. you know you diagnose me, what are you going to recommend, how is that going to affect my life, all these things. So until I can kind of navigate and help you feel safe, I'm already activating your stress response just by being face to face. So when you go for a walk, not only is the movement regulating, helps your lower systems be in balance and in sync, and allows your cortex to do the work. You're also not as threatening when you're talking about that. Same thing with like driving in the car. Some of my best talks with kids has been driving in the car. So, or playing a video game, sitting side by side, or whatever. So that helps a lot.
Driving in a car with kids does help make for better awkward conversations.
Awkward conversation, and you can't escape, right?
That's true. Not when you're going
They're
60.
locked in their seatbelt, and you're going for a drive. Where are we going? No, but yeah.
So you said when people laugh together, you think it actually helps make them connect stronger.
Mhm.
Or healing's even stronger. What about,
Both,
do you
yeah.
think that's true for movement as well?
If we move together, yeah.
Yeah.
Anything in terms of how we change our brain, neuroplasticity, which is a really important thing, because I'm like, hey, our brain changes to our very last breath. So um, we should all have hope that we can change, right? And so one of the things that is an element of neuroplasticity, or our brain's ability to change, is that if you apply a relational context to what you're trying to do, it's going to be more powerful. So if you learning is more powerful in terms of the relationship. If we studied something together, like collectively together, we're going to learn more powerfully than if I tried to learn on my own. Or learning in the classroom is much more powerful than learning on a tablet or something like that. So movement together, you're doing something together, you start to kind of sync up together, your biology kind of syncs up, there's a collective goal. I think, when it's kind of similar to teams, sports teams kind of moving together to accomplish a certain goal. There's such strong bonds in that. And I think that has a lot to do with moving together. So I always kind of think about, like, there's a reason, the reason might be that you go to personal trainers because they have expertise. But in these days, there's so many places you can get knowledge about how to work out. But personal trainer is very relational, and it's very being with somebody or working out with your friends. My one of my family members, she it is interesting, she went through a very difficult experience, like a relational experience that was painful, and her healing process is her and her girlfriends going to the gym and working out together and accomplishing these goals and doing all these things. And that is very powerful. But I think it's not only you're doing things good for your body, but you're also relational. So, I think that's why people go to the gym a lot, with friends and with people. I think that's very powerful.
That's probably what makes CrossFit such a strong presence.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Yes. And it's very supportive environment. And I think it's more than just kind of like, hey, we're encouraging. I think that plays a role. But I think there's something about just kind of connecting on a particular element, or we're all in it together. We're all working on the same thing, those types of things.
Like, yeah, accomplishing goals together. Like,
I mean, I think that's
you suffer together, you bond
right.
stronger.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like, you think about, like, that's probably similar to like military, right? Like going to boot camp together, you forge strong bonds with people around there because you're suffering together, you're overcoming together, you're, facing challenge. That's huge. Like, that's a huge part of healing. Like, if I have experienced some type of bad event in my life, whether it's physical bad or mental health bad or both, and I face a challenge, that's going to help me heal from that, because I'm having an experience. And it's so much easier to face a challenge when you're with somebody than when you're not. And so I think that's huge.
Speaking of with somebody and not with somebody, and your shirt says breathe, laugh, move.
Yes.
What if, like, if someone's trying to overcome a trauma, and they're not able to get with somebody, or they're not able to come see a therapist, what are some good entry points? What are things they can do?
Yeah. I mean, I think, well, part of it is I think when we experience trauma, that the tendency is to disconnect from the world, right? Because we're scared and our stress response is activated. And that's kind of like what we've tried to develop. So like a big piece of our work is trying to help people who need mental health support to actually reach out and get help. And a lot of times that's not something that people want to do. So we even kind of created a platform called Resilient Purpose Plus, and it's a virtual online platform, and it's is designed to kind of build a resilient self, right? And so if it has two levels to it, if you aren't in therapy and are not sure about therapy, this provides you a lot of videos and content that helps you kind of engage in healing. A lot of it's through breathing, a lot of it's through movement and laughter, doing these things that are going to kind of keep you regulated. The biggest thing about trauma is that trauma dysregulates us. It has us in a constant or overwhelming state of dysregulation. And dysregulation is the enemy to healing, learning, relationships. Like when we're dysregulated, it makes it harder for us to be at our best self. If we're dysregulated, it's going to make it really hard for you to exercise. If you're really dysregulated, it's going to be hard for you to go out with friends and do all these things that are really good for us. So we focus heavily in the beginning on learning how to regulate, because what trauma is trauma triggers these traumatic events that were so overwhelming, so painful, that what makes it traumatic is our brain is is unable to file it away, process it, make sense of the event, file it away, and just let it kind of go. It kind of keeps it in your forefront because you went through this really dangerous event. And so your brain says, I got to really pay attention to it. I need to pay attention to it a lot because I don't want you to get hurt again. I don't want you to die. I don't want you to, go through it again. So our brain's always like scanning the world for things that might remind it of that traumatic event so it can protect it. Like if, you can imagine if like you've ever been in a car wreck or whatever, like where you might want to stay, you might not drive anywhere near that neighborhood that you got in the car wreck because your brain's giving you all this anxiety and stress saying, you're getting close to where you got hurt, this is happening. So your brain kind of starts to think that these traumas are happening all over again. So it starts, dysregulating you, sending you all the stress, wanting you to fight or flight away from this particular event. So it dysregulates you. And oftentimes you're dysregulated during experiences that you don't need to be dysregulated in. So I give an example. I worked with a kid who was sexually abused at age 5 by his father, and the father's in jail and everything like that. And he goes to Walmart and he with his mom and step parent, and they're on a day pass when I was working in a residential program. And he goes to Walmart and he sees this guy in the Walmart and he just freaks out, like just completely dysregulated, panicking, everything like that. Thought it was his dad. Was dad, even though cognitively his brain knew, or he knew, my dad's in jail, that's no way it's him. His brain didn't know that. His brain just said, that looks like the person who abused you, and sent all these alarms, right? And so he panicked, and luckily the step parent and the mom kind of helped calm him down and help him stay regulated. The stepdad went to go find the person just to say, no, this isn't him, and stuff like that. But a lot of times our lower parts of the brain that doesn't think and doesn't really know time, and this is kind of related to the body keeps score, sounds the alarms when it sees anything that seems or looks like a traumatic event's going to happen all over again. And so then it acts as if it's happening all over again. That's like one of the core symptoms of trauma, is that you're re-experiencing the event all over again. And that's usually triggered by something that reminds you of that event. Think about a veteran who's gone to war and comes back with PTSD and is walking in the neighborhood and a car backfires and he hits the ground and he starts kind of panicking and getting really, dysregulated because he thinks it's gunfire. The brain can't differentiate between that loud sound as being, oh no, it's no worry, it's a car backfiring. It's saying that sounds pretty close to a gunfire at war. You need to get safe, right? And so we're often reacting into traumas that are not there, or our past traumas in our present day. So the first thing I say is, if we can teach people to learn how to self-regulate, that's the basis and the foundation. Number one, the more you regulate, the calmer your nervous system will be overall. You'll be a little bit more stable overall. Whereas, if I don't ever regulate and take care of myself, then I stay in this constant state of stress. And so I'm always like, I might be more irritable. I might be unable to pay attention and focus and listen. I start to kind of seek out like unhealthy coping, drugs, alcohol, things like that. So really it's all about regulating, which is what has also drawn me to taking your work in pressing reset with mental health work, because I see the pressing reset as a regulating activity, that if people did that every day, you're number one, you're calming your nervous system, like as you guys talk about, but you're creating lots of experience of being calm and being regulated and being safe. And so your brain is giving more and more messages of, I'm more in control of myself, I'm calm, I'm in safe places, you're giving them new experiences. And so it's about regulation. And if you want people to connect with others and reach out, they have to be regulated, right? So if I was assaulted by somebody, and it's a male or a female, whatever, my brain is going to, say, talking to people is pretty dangerous, you know? And so you're going to have all this anxiety and stress and discomfort with being out with people. Right. And so we want to kind of start with regulation, help build that capacity. That's why, like, if you read The Body Keeps Score, he really advocates for things like trauma sensitive yoga. And, that's helping us regain our body, regaining control of our body, being able to influence our body rather than being held captive by it, and things like that. And I think that's the same with pressing reset. You're helping regain control of your body, because especially with like assaults, like sexual assaults or physical assaults, you weren't able to use your body to prevent a traumatic event, right? And so you have to regain control. Yourself tends to not trust itself anymore. And so you have to give them new experiences. And that's stuff you can't figure out just talking, because it's all held in your body,
So if it's held in your body, is it possible to breathe, to laugh, and to move, to regulate yourself, where those traumatic events get, I don't know how to say this, but they get kind of dissolved into where they're just memories, but no longer threats?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we talk about in terms of how you the most effective trauma work has to do with revisiting the trauma in small doses, giving them exposure to those traumas. So like EMDR is all about that. We revisit these traumatic events, these experiences, and we help desensitize them through the eye movement. If anybody, eye movement, I think I talked about EMDR in the last podcast, but it's eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing. So you kind of desensitize through the bilateral stimulation. So like you could literally do EMDR by cross crawling. So you could literally like cross crawl through that memory. So you like help have them visualize the experience, and then you desensitize through the bilateral. And so you could do things like tapping and eye movements and stuff like that. Anything that kind of crosses that midline, right? And because it's kind of like what happens in trauma is it just, a lot of times when we have trauma, we struggle with our sleep. It disrupts our brain's ability to go through that REM process and like process our memories. That's when our experiences get consolidated and made sense of, is when we're sleeping. And so when we have trauma, that disrupts that sleep. So if I kind of went on a tangent and forgot what my real point was, but it's kind of like you want to revisit it, but in a tolerable dose. Just like if you have a person who comes into your gym and is injured from something, you're going to dose them. It's kind of that good, better, best, right? So you're going to dose them where they're at and not push them too far. You only move until you start feeling kind of any type of pain. Now we're going to stretch them a little bit, push them out of their comfort zone, but we're not going to overwhelm them. And so that's a lot of trauma work, is we really have to revisit. And I always say, like, people don't want to revisit their traumas. The problem is that they already do it. Their brain gives them intrusive thoughts and intrusive images of these events. So every day they're being revisited, but it's revisited in a very unpredictable way. You don't know when it's coming. And so it overwhelms. It happens at the worst times. It happens when you don't have a lot of support around you. And so that's what makes trauma so debilitating. But if we can, in a therapeutic way, revisit that trauma in a tolerable dose that stretches you, then that trauma becomes less powerful, right? And so I think, with going back to kind of like the movement and the breathing, if I think about the traumatic event and it creates all this yuck in my body, and I breathe, laugh, move, and that yuck goes away, I also create for my brain, hey, I know how to regulate myself. Like, I can get through this. I can, like, the brain gets an experience that says, when you feel this way, you can do this positive thing to help feel better. And so you're like, okay, I'm start being confident. It doesn't have to control everything in my life, or, and then you can move forward with that.
So you can build, basically you're building resilience because you're giving yourself an actionable tool that you can use to help when that trauma ninja pops up
Yeah.
on you
Trauma
unexpectedly.
ninja. Yeah. And I think about, I've been trying to like re-educate people or educate people on mental health from a different perspective than disorders. I really like, and I'm not the originator of this term, but looking at it as a mental health injury, just like a physical injury. You don't have a disorder. You have a knee injury or a shoulder injury or whatever. It can be rehabilitated. It can be restored. Um, but when we say disorder, it kind of gives people, and that's why a lot of people don't engage in treatment, because I'm going to get a diagnosis of a disorder, meaning that I'm broken. I'm not,
Means you're
I've got
stuck.
this, I'm stuck.
You're
Exactly.
stuck.
Right. Right. And imagine in your world, if you had these disorders and that are basically telling that person this is something that you have to live without. And a lot of times we've gone through our world like that. Like, oh, if you have, this type of thing, or when you have this, we say, well, you gotta totally rechange your life and make it like completely different. And so people get overwhelmed by it when all we really are talking about is doing these really capable things, breathing, moving, laughing, you know, rejoining, trusted others that you've had in your life, or reconnecting with your supports, or finding new supports through, Ted Lasso, kind of doing that. Like it took him a journey, but he finally found his way to get there, to kind of find value in that. So I just think and when you look at it as disorder, why would you want to go into a therapy office for that person to go, you know what, I'm going to diagnose you bipolar because you're crazy, and that's what's kind of like, I don't want to know that. It's like when you go to doctors to do a blood test, like you don't want to know what's like the results are. What if it's bad? You just kind of like
So,
people don't want to do that.
well, I mean, there's a lot I have seen people immediately change after they were told they had something versus before they knew they had something.
Mhm.
Like once they were told something, they were in the program of that something.
Yeah. Well, and I might get in trouble for this, but so many of the disorders in the DSM-5 are symptom based. So they are, you do these things, so you have this disorder. You stay up for all hours of the night, all the time, so you must be manic. Um, and it's you try to clean everything in your house, so you must be manic, so you're bipolar. Well, that might be, but it doesn't tell you why. It doesn't tell you what experiences, and we know that what's happened to us shapes who we are. It does that. So ADHD, nothing but symptoms. They're nothing but behavioral symptoms. It doesn't even tell you why you can't pay attention. There are many reasons why you can't pay attention. Can't pay attention because you have to go to the bathroom real bad and you can't stay focused. You can't pay attention because you have trauma in your life, and that disrupts your ability to stay focused because you're dysregulated all the time. It's hard to pay attention when you're depressed. It's hard to pay attention when you're really nervous and anxious, and so it also is hard to pay attention when your body needs to move and you're stuck in a chair and can't move. So we're saying, like, because you're having to be in this environment that is not conducive for how we're supposed to move and be and live and everything like that, then we have a disorder. And so it messes. I mean, we're just in a huge, like, it's just so hard. That's why there's so much stigma around mental health. That's why there's so many people that are in crisis, because no one wants to get help and go down that road because it's scary. And so we have to kind of see it as, no one really is. Those are things that always kind of frustrate me and get me really, so that's why we created the Resilient Purpose Plus. Is number one, it could get you started towards healing, and then we could build that resilience. So then you can, if you need to kind of meet with a professional about a trauma or whatever, we can get you there to the point where you are able to work through some of those traumatic events. So that this online is like videos and PDF tools, and we do like these monthly mentorship calls to kind of reinforce some of those skills, like the regulation skills and connecting with others and those types of things. But it doesn't replace therapy. Some people still need to kind of work with people about those types of things. But we wanted to get people strong enough and comfortable enough and familiar enough with these concepts so that then they are not afraid or hesitant about seeking help. And the other piece is, even when you go to therapy, like if Tim, if you went and sought out a therapist, you'd probably see them 55 minutes out of a week at best. There's 23 more hours in the day. There's 6 more days in the week where you can be affected and impacted by your mental health. We wanted you to have tools. We want you to have tools so that you can access those tools, like on Wednesday when you can't talk to your therapist, so that you can take care of yourself and work on that, you know. So trying to find ways for people to kind of be able to spend daily time on their mental health.
So if somebody wants to, where can they go? Like, is there what's the URL for the Resilient Purpose Plus?
So we created this new company called the Resilient Purpose LLC. It's Resilient Purpose. And so you can go to one of 2 sites. Our main company website is the resilientpurpose.com. But the URL where you can easily find the link for the Resilient Purpose Plus, but the URL for the actual Resilient Purpose Plus website is resilientpurposeplus.uscreen.io. I know it's a mouthful, but that's kind of where you're gonna. And so there's monthly subscriptions, there's a yearly subscription where you have access to the content all year. We're heavily working on a 10 or 8-week course. So we're going to take those videos and just, if you wanted to kind of purchase it as a course, where there's going to be a guidebook associated with it, kind of a planner on how to kind of, each week is going to be a set of videos. And then we're going to kind of take you through the platform in a sense, most of the platform in a sense, and have you kind of do some self-reflection about what you're doing, learn about your experience, and then kind of it is a more structured way to use the platform than the typical subscription, so that people can, you know, if you just want access to those videos and keep, you know, using them and you know, so there's videos on, like, we do a thing called like balloon breathing and sun breathing, which is we do like progressive muscle relaxation, and then we have a whole content on how to build back relational connections. And then we have a whole set of content on how to reflect and reason about our experience, learn from our experience, and be able to kind of plan and set goals and do all those things, so you can kind of more fine tune what you're trying to do. And then we also have a set of videos that are really educational. So we learn about how to navigate our stress response, learn about the triune brain, the 3 systems in our brain that kind of govern our functioning and behavior, learning about the power of breathing, laughing, and moving, and you know, stuff like that. So we're gonna start building new content about also that's a little bit more heavier on the movement side as well, just to kind of incorporate those aspects too, so you can use your body to heal and things like that.
Is it for only specific mental injuries, or is it more open for mental injuries, period?
I think it's for anything. I think you don't even have to have a mental injury, like, because one of the things is
well, that's what I was thinking. The way you were describing it right there, I was like, well, this sounds like stuff that I would even like to do.
So we kind of talk about, like, yes, probably because of the priority of it, we're seeking out people that are struggling. But in reality, if you look at kind of like, and COVID is really kind of an example of how this is, there was a lot of people that probably had their life together, probably doing well, didn't really have any emotional struggles or mental health injuries or anything like that. But then COVID turned their life upside down. They lost people. And all of a sudden you have these typically resilient people all of a sudden becoming less resilient and less typical. And so they become more vulnerable, and they're having a harder time coping, and they don't know how to handle things, and they're having relational problems now, and they're struggling at work, and all of a sudden their life has shifted because our stress response is malleable. And I like to look at mental health through our stress response, our ability to tolerate stress. And so all of a sudden, because of this big unpredictable life event, it really kind of threw us, somewhere else. And same thing happens with traumas. You're going through the world, everything's great, you're having a great time, and then all of a sudden you go through this major trauma, it throws your life upside down. What if I work on building a resilient self right from the start, even before any traumas happen, even before any events happen? I build my therapeutic web. I know how I create a lot of coping skills so that when bad things happen, I know how to respond to it. So it's kind of like, if, what if we be more proactive and preventative than reactive and, responsive? So there is, to be honest with you, my platform, I feel, is very scalable, and it's very, lots of levels.
Right.
I also think about especially when we do the coursework, it's a way that you can facilitate with others. You can do, you could do a small group with people and run through it all together and kind of add that relational element to it. Or you could just do it on your own. It's just, there's so many different ways that you can use it. And it's in the online age, so we wanted to kind of tap into the fact that people are always on their phones or computers or
That is true.
tablets. So it's a great way that people like to get their knowledge. And the other thing is, I wanted a place where I didn't have to go all over the place to find what I need. I'm going to create a one place where people can go and know how to kind of make those changes or improve.
That really sounds awesome. Resilientpurpose.com is the easiest way to find it.
Yes.
And I'll put both URLs in the notes. I got one more question for you. So Ted Lasso season 2.
Yes.
So in season 1, Ted was my favorite character.
Yeah.
In season 2, I still love Ted, and he's still my favorite, but I have a new favorite.
Who's that?
How about you? Roy Kent.
Oh, Roy Kent. Yeah, Roy's definitely my
his honesty is amazing. Like,
yes. His relationship with what's her name?
Keely.
I knew it was a K name. Is hysterical and just, it's funny and I kind of like, there's some things about him like I appreciate, like, because he starts out the season like as a commentator, and he's just hysterical in the way, like, it's kind of the commentator speak, and he just is not giving you what is typical. So that's always fun and humorous. So yeah, he's definitely my favorite. I don't know. I mean, I think you got to know them more, I think, over time. Yeah. Like Sammy and it's just all the different people, and even like the guy is played by Dunphy. What's the superstar soccer player's name?
Jamie.
Jamie, yeah, Jamie Tart. So yeah, just seeing him grow.
He grew. His character grew tons, leaps and bounds.
And just hearing, this is what I love. So it's very like based in reality, in the sense that people are who they are based on what's happened to them. And you got to see Jamie's life experiences from his relationship with his dad that made him who he was. But then you add in these other relational experiences with Ted Lasso and Roy, and then all of a sudden you see him growing into this new person.
No doubt. What was your favorite scene out of season 2?
Oh, geez.
Favorite moment?
Favorite moments? Probably the therapy session with Ted Lasso, where he's very resistant to therapy, is probably my favorite, because it's so in tune with my life, like in terms of like what we see,
right,
and kind of the thoughts about therapy and things like that. So I thought it was really brilliant. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still not sure how I'm taking the transition of what's his name to Nate to the new team, and that whole spiral of out of control for him. So I'm very interested to see how they handle season 3.
So my favorite scene, flat out, hands down, was when Roy hugged Jamie Tart after Jamie punched his dad.
Yeah.
That almost, like, I mean, that was breath stealing. I mean, it's just
Yes.
amazing.
That was very
And
powerful.
I'll be honest, I've probably watched the Christmas episode 5 to 6, 7 times, somewhere in there. It's just
Good
just an
episode.
awesome episode.
It is. No, I like, yeah, I know. And yeah, they're all good. And I love, it's just a good, I think you could even get some healing just watching that, right?
You
Like you
can
just,
definitely.
so there's elements to all that. There's so many ways that we can heal ourselves, and you know, so we just want people to kind of find healing and wellness and resilience. So
Well, that's what we're made to do, right?
mhm. Yeah, and that falls in line with your stuff. Like your body is meant to be resilient. Your body is meant to not be injured and to do those things. But we lose sight of, what helps us and what helps us heal. And I talk about this in schools all the time, even in like schools, like, like in pre-K and kindergarten, you play a lot and you run around and you do all those things. That didn't stop becoming productive for us or beneficial for us, but we stopped. We thought, oh, that's only for little kids. No, we all should play, and we should play a lot, and that's going to be healing. And actually we can learn pretty efficiently by play, and because it's relational, there's movement, there's engagement, so it's just the same thing. Like there's a lot of things that we already know how to do that can help us heal. We just need to do it more.
Amen.
Amen.
Doug, thanks so much for being on the show.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Now get outside and play.